Tonight, Australia joins the war in the Middle East, sending troops and aircraft to protect Gulf states. Asylum granted to 5 Iranian soccer players, but the rest face an uncertain homecoming. And petrol panic buying puts regional industries on edge. Hello, I'm Selina Bryan. This is ABC News. Also tonight, an emotional David Littleproud quits as Nationals leader. The Tasmania Devils unlikely to play AFL at Mac Point before 2031. And Carlton gives the cold shoulder to a former captain over his club criticism. The US President Donald Trump is sending mixed messages on how long the war in the Middle East could last. The US President initially said the conflict was pretty much complete, before arguing there was more to achieve.
A lot of friends, sit down, we have a little time.
Signalling that the war could soon be over.
We took a little excursion because we felt we had to do that to get rid of some evil. And I think you'll see it's going to be a short-term excursion.
While at the same time threatening to escalate the conflict.
We could call it a tremendous success right now as we leave here, I could call it, or we could go further, and we're going to go further.
Donald Trump says he's disappointed with the elevation of Moshtaba Khamenei as Iran's new supreme leader, but won't say whether he'll be targeted like his father was. The son of the assassinated Ayatollah celebrated on the streets of Iran. Death to America, this crowd is chanting. One Iranian sent the ABC a voice note arguing the US and Israeli strikes have sparked a backlash in his country.
Even people who had difficulties with the government, they don't want their children to go to school and not come back. They don't want their hospitals to be bombed.
But another resident insisted the regime still faces fierce opposition.
My friends and I are waiting for any new selected leader to be eliminated by Israel and Trump. We are ultimately waiting for the Islamic Republic to be toppled soon.
Iran continues to fire back at Israel using cluster munitions that break apart in the air. At least one person was killed at this construction site near Tel Aviv's airport. And this is one of the new threats from these Iranian missiles. You can see down here the shrapnel which has ripped through the metal casing of this escalator. It is that shrapnel coming from cluster munitions which is posing one of the gravest threats to the public.
Do you see any military facilities around you? The Iranians are targeting civilians.
But Israel and the US are also facing allegations of striking civilians, with video appearing to show it was an American Tomahawk missile that hit a girls' school in Iran, killing more than 160 people. The US is investigating.
Whatever the report shows, I'm willing to live with that report.
Standing by his decisions as Commander-in-Chief. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Jerusalem.
Australia has been drawn into the war in the Middle East, deploying 85 ADF personnel to the region tonight to defend against Iranian strikes in the Gulf. Australia is also deploying a long-range reconnaissance aircraft to the UAE to help bolster Gulf countries' defences.
Fighter jets hunt drones over the beaches of Dubai. Whoa. And Bahrainians piece together the aftermath of a deadly strike, as Iran's attacks take a growing toll on its neighbours in the Persian Gulf. It's a conflict that is now drawing Australia in.
This growing wave of dangerous and destabilising attacks from Iran puts civilian lives at risk, of course including Australian lives.
In response to a request for help from the UAE, Australia will send an E-7A Wedgetail surveillance plane and 85 personnel with it, capable of spotting drones and missiles over an area larger than Western Australia, and recently put to use over the skies of Ukraine.
The Wedgetail and supporting Australian Defence Force personnel will be deployed for an initial 4 weeks in support of the collective self-defence of Gulf nations.
We must stand together against a regime like this.
Australia will also send over missiles to help with the increasingly costly task of taking down Iran's cheap, long-range and deadly drones.
Potentially, if this goes on further, Australia should look at what more we could provide in a defensive capacity. We do have a range of capacities, including our fighter aircraft.
Others argue sending weapons to the Gulf will only drag Australia further into the conflict, as the government maintains it will not take offensive action against Iran.
Every military asset we sent into the region is designed to free up another US military asset to be used to kill people in Iran.
The government insists that two principles remain firm. Australia will only take defensive action in this conflict and no boots will be put on the ground in Iran. But if this war continues to escalate, the question becomes whether Australia's involvement escalates with it. Tom Lowry, ABC News, Canberra.
Those Australian personnel and the Wedgetail aircraft will be landing in the UAE overnight. Let's bring in our Global Affairs editor, Laura Tingle, who's in Dubai. Laura, when will they be operational?
Selina, they're expected to be operational by the end of the week, and they'll be contributing to the defence of UAE airspace, which has been subjected to more missile and drone strikes than Israel itself. Not all targeted at US assets. A lot of it's landed on civilian infrastructure. And the big question here in the UAE, as it is in the rest of the Gulf, whether the air defence systems will run out. So they're very grateful for the assistance that Australia can provide with this aircraft, providing air-to-air interference and strikes against these incoming missiles.
Laura Tingle there. 5 members of the Iranian women's soccer team have been granted humanitarian visas by the Australian government amid grave concerns for their safety. The extraordinary diplomatic operation unfolded over the past 48 hours. And tonight, there's a chance more of their teammates could seek asylum. Here's National Affairs correspondent Jane Norman.
A sports team at the centre of a diplomatic firestorm. Iran's Lionesses leave their Gold Coast hotel as supporters desperately try and block their path. 5 of their teammates had staged a daring escape, granted refuge in the dark before dawn.
There were lots of photos, lots of celebrating, and then a spontaneous outbreak of Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi.
The secret operation unfolded on Sunday. Tony Burke flying to the Gold Coast where the team was playing their final Asian Cup match. Immigration officials at the game conveying a message that help was on offer. On Monday, conversations started in earnest with 5 of the athletes, and that night they escaped, the AFP moving the women to a safe location. The minister returned, and in the early hours of this morning, their visas had been issued.
They're safe here and they should feel at home here.
I understand that it was probably the hardest decision they all had to make.
The women gained global attention last week when they refused to sing their national anthem before their opening match against South Korea. A silent protest labelled an act of wartime treachery on Iranian state TV. As the diplomatic operation unfolded behind the scenes, Donald Trump threw a giant spotlight on it, demanding on social media that Anthony Albanese grant the women asylum. A 2 a.m. phone call to the Prime Minister confirmed Australia already had, prompting the President to post again. He's on it.
I was able to convey to him the action that we'd undertaken.
The fate of their teammates hangs in the balance. One player seen here being led onto the bus to the airport. Concerns officers from Iran's hardline Revolutionary Guard are travelling with them.
We say to them, if you want our help, help is here.
Every reasonable Australian would want a good outcome for their safety and for their future.
Jane Norman, ABC News, Canberra.
The price of oil has started to dip after the US president threatened Iran with fire and fury over the global supply shock. But fears of shortages have seen petrol pumps start to run dry across parts of Australia as experts warn of the nation's vulnerabilities.
A servo with no petrol running dry in Texas, Queensland.
It's quite stressful. We're not able to give them fuel and they need fuel.
And no joy here in Whyalla in regional Australia either.
Tanks went dry.
Pumps in Victoria's second biggest city are starting to run dry too.
We've got half a tank just in case.
Actually, I am panicked, so I think some people are going to be panicked too.
Trawlers in Queensland docked without diesel.
The 3 major fuel wharves have no fuel for us and they don't know when they can get it.
The global oil supply shock from the widening war has drivers and industries on edge.
The big message for every Australian is don't panic. The suppliers are there.
But supply is clearly being drained, especially in parts of regional Australia.
We've had up to a month's supply go out, leave the system in a matter of a few days.
Experts predict that Australia has 25 days left in reserve.
If we don't get diesel, it'll disable civil society.
The price of diesel has jumped again to $2.30, while unleaded petrol is up to $2.24 in Darwin, with Perth the cheapest at $1.93. After rocketing past $100 a barrel, oil prices have started to drop back down. US President Donald Trump warning Iran that if it doesn't allow oil to flow, it'll hit Tehran 20 times harder.
If Iran does anything to do that, they'll get hit at a much, much harder level. They'll never be able to recover.
There's still oil. It's a supply chain issue, and that directly affects Australia.
We're not just dependent on the Middle East for petrol. Our farmers rely on fertiliser that comes out of the region. Without it, winter crops sown next month could be in jeopardy.
The reality is, in regional communities, they've run out of fuel in these towns. Now, if that happened in a city suburb, they'd be hell to pay.
All of this will push up inflation, from food to petrol pumps, raising the risk of higher interest rates as well. Amelia Turzon, ABC News.
And there'll be more on the war in the Middle East tonight on 7:30 when Sarah Ferguson interviews the spokesperson for the Iranian Foreign Ministry, Ismail Baghai. In a shock announcement, David Littleproud has revealed he's resigning as the leader of the Nationals, but will stay on in Parliament as the member for Maranoa. Here's National Affairs correspondent Jane Norman.
David Littleproud surprised his own colleagues, announcing that after 4 years in the job, he's stepping down as Nationals leader. Quite simply, he says he's run out of energy, but it's clear last year's devastating election defeat has taken its toll.
I'm buggered. I'd have enough. To lead this great party would be the wrong thing for me to do.
It's been a tumultuous time on the Conservative side of politics. David Littleproud engineered 2 coalition splits and had a public falling out with former Liberal leader Susan Lee. So far, Senator Matt Canavan has confirmed he'll contest the leadership. Others are considering their options. Whoever gets the job will need to contend with the rise of One Nation and will face their first test with the upcoming Farrer by-election.
The Tasmania Devils may not make their Mac Point Stadium AFL debut until round 1 2031. The Macquarie Point Development Corporation has until December 2030 to deliver the build and has indicated it may need all of its allowed time. Today it unveiled a roof test rig simulating playing conditions at the stadium for cricket.
There were initially fears cricket would be a no-go at Macquarie Point. Today, the process to alleviate those fears officially began.
Over the next couple of weeks, we'll throw male and female cricketers, left-handers, right-handers, bowlers, batters and keepers at this little project. We'll capture as much data as possible.
5 metres high and 20 metres long, this $2 million test rig big enough to accurately determine the effects of roof shadows on the pitch, as well as grass growth and broadcast aesthetics, the eyes of the cricketing world on Tasmania.
The interest in this globally has probably shocked me. So, a lot of the footage that we're taking now, no doubt once we've gleaned all the data that we need out of it, will be packaged up and sent to the right places.
Tigers stars Bo Webster and Matthew Wade padding up, a synthetic roof with a matte finish on the underside billed as the potential answer to initial concerns.
So that gives us the dispersion of the light, so we get consistency in light, and it breaks up that solid structures that would otherwise cast a shadow.
Increased certainty for cricket, but just when football might be played in the new stadium remains unclear. Mac Point technically has until December 2030 to complete the build, and it's time it might just need, meaning the Devils might not make their Mac Point debut until the 2031 season. Whether the $1.13 billion stadium can be delivered sooner is the key question.
If there's any update to any of those timelines or arrangements, we'll announce those at that time.
More clarity to come following the construction tender stage, but 3 seasons playing at existing venues, an increasingly likely proposition for the Devils. Chris Rowbottom, ABC News.
The Queensland city of Bundaberg is in the grip of an emergency tonight as the Burnett River reaches a major flood level. Close to 300 homes are at risk of inundation when the river peaks overnight.
Residents ordered to evacuate as the Burnett River swallows streets, homes and businesses.
They have been warned that they need to leave immediately.
Boats and pontoons pulled from their moorings, cars submerged as locals make last-minute preparations, with the north set to be cut off for several days.
When the 2010 flood hit, this house actually went under.
We've been through it a few times, and if there's anything under the house, you're sort of prepared to lose that.
We can drive, just get a car and drive, but where are we going to put the chook?
As the community waits out the overnight peak, there's some relief. The water won't reach the height of the 2010 floods, but authorities say there'll still be heartbreaking consequences if the water reaches 7.5 metres, as businesses on the south side brace for impact. Fridges and freezers emptied, trying to save perishable goods.
We've just cleared out everything out of every single shed, shop, freezer.
The peak in both Gayndah and Mundubbera was just below impacting homes, which was really, a blessing for that community. That won't be the case here in Bundaberg.
Upstream, the region's troubled Paradise Dam, which had its capacity lowered and walls reinforced to make it safe, faces its first test. It's currently at double its capacity.
There's no issues with the structure of the dam. It is, from all the information we've got, it is safe at the moment.
The threat has passed for Gayndah and Mundubbera, with locals grateful it wasn't worse. Lucy Lorem, ABC News, Bundaberg.
A Perth court has heard allegations former Australian rules footballer Barry Cable sexually abused a young girl in the late 1960s. The woman, now in her 60s, claims to have been around 10 years old at the time of the alleged offending. Barry Cable denies the allegations.
Barry Cable was a decorated Australian rules footballer in the 60s and 70s.
Across to Cable, a straight shot's needed.
It's during this time the now 82-year-old is accused of sexually abusing a young girl. In her opening statement, Crown Prosecutor Kim Jennings told the Perth District Court Mr Cable was very well known and well liked, but that behind that spotlight there was a dark side. The alleged victim, who lived in an orphanage as a child, told the court she stayed with Mr Cable and his wife for a few weeks during the late 1960s, alleging the sexual abuse happened on several occasions. But Mr Cable's lawyer, Tom Percy, told the court the allegations were false, saying there were no records showing this woman had been absent from the orphanage for a period of weeks. He suggested there was a financial motive for her allegations because they emerged in 2023, around the time a judge found he had sexually abused a different girl in a civil trial, telling the woman she wanted to cash in too, to which she replied, "No, I did not." Asked why she hadn't told anyone about the alleged abuse at the time, the woman told the court, "Because he told me no one would believe me because he was Barry Cable." The judge-alone trial also heard evidence from the woman who won the civil case against Barry Cable. She described multiple instances of sexual assault against her. The trial is also set to hear from 2 more women. The prosecution arguing this shows a tendency for Barry Cable to be sexually attracted to young underage girls and to act upon that sexual interest. Rhiannon Shine, ABC News, Perth.
And if you or someone you know needs help, please contact 1800 RESPECT by phone or their website. The federal government has secured a deal to raise taxes on Australia's wealthiest superannuation accounts. Labor has locked in support from the Greens to pass the legislation through the Senate this week without amendments. From July, those with balances over $3 million will see their earnings tax doubled to 30%, while balances over $10 million will be hit with a 40% rate. A dramatic decline in doctors who do house calls is leaving vulnerable people in distressing and potentially dangerous situations. Care workers report this is leading to more people ending up in hospital or residential care.
Yes, you know here, Dr. Crimmins.
Regular GP checkups at her group home in Sydney's Inner West are essential for Janet Smith.
How are you?
After being diagnosed with a neurodegenerative disorder, Huntington's disease, 15 years ago, Janet's daughter, Alyssa, could no longer care for her without medical support at home.
It was almost impossible to get GPs to the home.
Trips to the doctors were challenging.
It was very much this constant stress. And that was part of the reason I ended up putting her into care.
GPs' home visits have declined by 85% nationally in the past 30 years. But Dr John Crimmins still visits people with disability or chronic diseases like Janet at their home.
Not having home visits means that patients are actually then turning up at ED departments who are already swamped.
Marilyn Smith experienced this firsthand while caring for her lifelong friend with dementia. It meant she had to go into a nursing home, something home care providers says happens too often because it's almost impossible to get a GP to the home.
It became very clear that nobody wants to pick up home visits for a demented person at home.
But doctors say they're constrained by poor remuneration and resourcing.
The Royal Australian College of GPs wants the federal government to increase the Medicare rebate for home visiting GPs. The Federal Health Department says it is currently reviewing the Medicare benefit schedule for primary care. Catherine Gregory, ABC News.
To finance now, and local share prices bounced back today in line with markets around the world as the oil price fell back sharply. Here's Alan Kohler.
The oil price had already fallen below $100 a barrel when President Trump rang a reporter from CBS News. She immediately posted her scoop on X at 6:15 this morning, our time, saying he had told her the war is very complete, pretty much, and he's thinking about taking over the Straits of Hormuz, whatever that might mean. The oil price promptly dropped to 85. The news conference a couple of hours later didn't take things much further, even though he foreshadowed the removal of sanctions to get oil flowing. But in general, markets are feeling much better about things today than they were yesterday. But it really is a day-by-day proposition. The oil price is still about $25 above where it was before the United States and Israel started bombing Iran and the Persian Gulf slammed shut, while gold and silver went up today. The share market had a bit of a bounce, with investors buying miners and banks and selling oil and gas stocks. The US market rose last night, as did Japanese and Korean stocks today. And the Aussie dollar moved a bit higher against the US dollar but stayed steady against the euro. Now, the government might be wishing Australia taxed its LNG exports as much as the royalties on iron ore, and better still, coal. Liquid natural gas prices are soaring, but we only get 2% of that on top of the company tax, compared with 7% for iron ore and 13% for coal. And finally, the Roy Morgan ANZ Consumer Sentiment Survey today showed that, unsurprisingly, inflation expectations have surged. This is what the Reserve Bank is worried about. And if interest rates go up next Tuesday, or more likely in May, this will be why. And that's finance.
Carlton coach Michael Voss has called for unity after a private spray from a former captain went public. Sam Docherty gave a frank assessment of the team following the opening round loss to the Swans, leading the Blues to cancel his speaking gig at an upcoming club function.
He's Carlton's cult hero, a former captain and a fierce defender. Only this week, Sam Docherty became the unwitting antagonist.
I don't spend a hell of a lot of time focusing or sharing what others say about us. What I do is reinforce the behaviours we need.
Following the Blues' opening round thumping, the 184-game defender shared his thoughts privately with his friend, former player Dan Gorringe, who aired them on a podcast.
Then they start losing contests, they get under pressure, they can't get a hold of the ball, and they're just an absolute show. So basically you smack our mids again this year and we'll be
Culturally, we defeat ourselves. I just felt that was an example of that.
Michael Voss spent last year defending the club's culture, and in a new season, he had to do it again.
We're not going to get mixed between the old and the new. We're new, and that's the way we're going forward.
Hey, it was me. Hand up. Exile me. Don't let me near anything.
Carlton is now in the spotlight to respond, and they'll get a chance to do so here at the MCG on Thursday night. But as a result of the comments, the club has taken a public stand, uninviting the former captain to a function here on Thursday night. The Lions have lost their first fight, with the tribunal upholding Darcy Gardner's one-match suspension for a strike on Aaron Norton.
Oh, is that 50? Was it late?
Making matters worse, they'll also miss Hugh McCluggage and Zach Bailey for Saturday's match against the red-hot Sydney Swans. Alexia Pesce, ABC News, Melbourne.
The Matildas will study footage of the North Korean team ahead of Friday's Women's Asian Cup quarter-final in Perth. North Korea finished second in its group after a controversial 2-1 loss to China in Parramatta. A Chinese goal that was initially disallowed for offside was awarded after a video review. The North Koreans refused to play the remainder of the first half, but returned for the second half. Six-time gold medalist Michael Milton has made an emotional return to the Winter Paralympics in Italy after an absence of 2 decades. The 52-year-old competed in the Super G standing event less than a month after surgery on a fractured leg. Australia's most decorated Winter Paralympian was disappointed to finish 23rd in his comeback race.
Certainly not the way I want to be back. It's a super tough race. It's a challenging hill, coming back from injury, and I think in my head it was probably the toughest race I've ever done.
The Tasmanian Tigers have the chance to lift the domestic one-day trophy tomorrow, facing off against New South Wales in Hobart. The last time the Tigers lifted the cup was back in 2010, as Tim Payne blasted 100 at the MCG and Jared Denton claimed 5 wickets. The Tigers host the day-night match at Bellerive Oval as the threat of rain hangs about. Captains Jordan Silk and Curtis Patterson got their hands on the trophy today. Australia spinner Adam Zampa is out for the Blues, and Tasmania has named a 17-man squad, with the final side to be decided tomorrow. And the Jack Jumpers have appointed an experienced sports administrator as their new chief executive. Trent Jacobs is the former head of the Melbourne Victory A-League side and held other senior roles at the Richmond Tigers AFL club. He'll now steer the Jack Jumpers and sister club the Jewels after the departure of Christine Finnegan.
The Jack Jumpers and Jewels have a really clear identity. The DNA, the culture of Defend the Island, it's something that really resonated with me, and I'm really, really keen to be a part of it.
To the weather now, and tonight's photo of cloud reflections at Hawley Beach is from Peter Patmore. There were isolated light showers about the north and west at times during the day, extending to the south during the evening. Fine about the east coast. The top temperature was 28 at Ouse, Hobart reached 24 and Launceston 26. Yesterday and overnight, the highest rainfall was 6 millimetres at St Helens. On the national satellite sequence, a thick band of cloud flows over the southwestern part of WA, and a high pressure ridge over the New South Wales and Queensland coasts is drawing patchy low-level cloud onshore. On tomorrow's synoptic chart, a cold front is forecast to cross the state from the west tomorrow, followed by a ridge of high pressure on Thursday. And across the country tomorrow, hot and sunny in Sydney and Perth, showers in Melbourne, mostly sunny in Brisbane and Adelaide. For Tasmania, widespread showers statewide, easing and contracting mainly to the west and far south in the late evening. Possible morning thunderstorms about the west and north coasts. And here's where that rain is forecast to fall tomorrow throughout the day. Rain for the northwest, 19 degrees for Burnie, 20 for Devonport and 18 in Queenstown. Rain too in Launceston with a top of 21 and showers on the east coast. And for Hobart, rain and a top of 21 degrees. Sunrise tomorrow is at 7:01 a.m. and the UV will be high. On the coastal waters, westerly winds up to 30 knots around the state, 35 knots in the southwest. Winds more northerly in the west and southeast. There's a gale warning for the southwest coast and a strong wind warning for all the remaining coastal waters and the southwest lakes. To the outlook for Thursday, showers about the west and south, falling as snow to 1,000 metres about the southwest during the evening, mostly fine elsewhere. And for Friday, isolated showers about the west and south, easing and contracting to the far southwest during the day, fine elsewhere, and warm maximum temperatures throughout the week ahead in Launceston and Hobart. And that's it for this evening's program. If you missed any of tonight's stories, you'll soon be able to catch up on iView. Up next, 7:30. Good night.